Hello again, and thank you for staying with us. Now, tomorrow, the African academics will gather in South Africa to discuss the continent's response to digitization, conflict, and its impact on African organizations and societies. Under the theme, Transforming Organizations in the Digital, the 7th Biennial Conference of the African Academy of Management will also look at the continent's adaptability. For more on this, I am joined by Dr. Natasha Winkler-Titus. She's a senior lecturer in Organisational Behaviour and Leadership at Stellenbosch Business School. Dr. Natasha, a pleasure to have you on the program this afternoon. Now, within the context of Africa's response to digitization, what role do you envision responsible leadership playing in shaping a positive impact on both organizations and societies?
Thanks so much, Natasha, and thanks for having me. But all the best of the new year to you and your listeners. Responsible leadership, as we know, is the leadership that functions at 4 levels. And we believe at the Stellenbosch Business School, it's a core principle of management education. If you cannot understand yourself and lead yourself, it'll start evolving in challenges in leading in relationship, leading at an organizational level. And obviously, all this leadership has an impact and consequences beyond just your organization. Now, leading at all 4 levels calls for accountability. So where you have sphere of influence and control, you need to make conscious decisions to do what is good, right, and sustainable for all the stakeholders, not just your organization. Leaders thinking beyond selfish gain and immediate success, and consider the greater impact of their actions on the decisions for business, society, and the broader narrative. And we're starting to see how, not even in formal structure, but our collective narrative is starting to hold these businesses accountable.
Let's look at the theme for this year's conference. It is transforming organizations in the digital era. It is quite captivating, I must say. Could you provide a specific example of how African organizations are navigating the challenges posed by globalization as well as digitization as well?
Yes, of course. So obviously, firstly, globalization. We do live in a connected world, although sometimes we see the disparities, and COVID has really brought those borders up again. But globalization brings things like multiculturalism and enhances diversity. It requires of leaders to lead in an international context, and those type of things can have unintended consequences. For example, if you think of the war in Ukraine, although it is far removed from a country like South Africa and it's not close to us, but it has an impact. One of my MBA students, for example, had unintended consequences when their supply chain was impacted because of that war. But it's important for businesses to create awareness and understand the potential marginalization issues and inclusion issues that can happen when you lead in a multicultural context. Technology also creates an array of opportunities and connections. For example, we can work across borders, we can overcome barriers of language and distance when we apply technology. For leaders to lead in different contexts means they have to be globally relevant, but they have to be locally appropriate. The world is small and global supply chains. Then there's the digitization side of things. Technology has created much opportunities and unlocked opportunities, but it unfortunately also had unintended consequences. Consequences like exclusion, the divide between the haves and the have-nots, the reskilling and upskilling, and completely new career paths. So we have to think about how we develop people for the new world of work. Then the ethics side of it, the always-on mentality, the ethics of technology, fake news that are out there, impact on humanity. For example, digital overload, the always-on mentality, creating burnout. So those are some of the challenges and opportunities that digitization brings to the fore.
So the panel discussion on getting real about business and conflict in Africa addresses a very critical issue. How can the private sector then effectively contribute to a peaceful development on the continent? And what do you see as the key challenges in achieving this goal?
Yes, so I think at foundational level, we must remember that business, government, and society is always tightly connected. Whether we like each other or get along, we are codependent. We cannot afford to operate independently. Scholars and researchers need to be more active and involved in doing research and also providing that intelligence to inform policy in government. And ultimately, that will then guide the relationship between business and society. Now, a responsible business or responsible leadership and management practices must then ensure the business activity advances human development and prosperity beyond the shareholder value only. If not, we can see that these business activities can disrupt social cohesion and the challenges of the rule of law. At the business school, for example, at Stellenbosch Business School, Prof. Brian Ganson holds a chair in business and conflict, which is not only about research alone, but actively working to resolve some of these issues between business and society. And some of the challenges they experience would be things like a disconnection between these four players and also the speed to find resolutions appropriate to the environment.
So I want to mention something from Professor Ganson, who highlights the need for management scholars, policymakers as well as business leaders to reconsider prevailing notions. What specific changes or even shifts in mindset do you believe are necessary to address the complex interplay between business, conflict and peace in Africa?
I think, first of all, we really need to come together better. We need to break down this competition and to something more like a co-opetition. We use the word in consulting of co-opetition, so that we can collaborate for success and for the greater good. We must embed the idea of significance. You know, success is about your achievement, but significance is when your success starts enabling others to be successful. So that's a mindset change. A sustainable bottom line, for example, must be financial sustainability, but alongside it, there must also be dignity and success for our people and the wellness of our environment. You have to have that triple bottom line. The continent as well must find its own solutions. You know, the day of looking at the global south, we have a conference where we have the global north coming to the global south, but we have to lead that conversation. We have to own our solutions. We mustn't forget our values. You know, as Africans, we need to go back to our traditional roots. Think, for example, Ubuntu. We need to infuse our ethnicity and our cultural values when it comes to best practices in workplace. And then lastly, we mustn't underplay the impact that colonialism continues to have in our mindset, in our paradigms. The challenges that we experience then still lingers on, and it comes through in practical challenges in holding that narrative that we form of the colonial past, but also how we live and work and do in today's mindset. So we really have to be better positioned to rethink and design for a better future. We must understand the fundamental issues that is dividing people at this point in time.
As the conference delves into workplace dignity, justice and prosperity being some of the themes, could you share the practical strategies that can be employed to ensure responsible leadership and sustainable management practices, especially in African organizations?
Yes, I think in an organization, as in any context, even at a personal level, you always have to be clear about your purpose and your mandate. For example, at the Stellenbosch Business School, we have a mandate around knowledge generation through research and the dissemination of such knowledge through teaching. But it is the way we operationalize this mandate that becomes critical. So, for example, we can't only teach and research responsible leadership, we have to infuse it in our own sustainability and social impact efforts. Sustainable development, for example, is grounded in 3 core areas. As I said, it's about economic growth, social equity, and environmental protection. So the people practices in any business must always, for example, consider all workers. We tend to sometimes forget contract labor or part-time labor, and then they are marginalized in the protection of human development in business settings. We have to educate leaders in responsible management practices. You have to develop an ethos of community. For example, the business system has strong partnerships and positive partnerships. Again, at the business school, we have a small business academy where we do education to small businesses around management practices. But at the same time, it is also a focus on social impact for us. It's affordable skills development for the business owner, but it ensures resilient and sustainable small businesses. And it gives them a platform for social capital as well.
Thank you so much. That's Dr. Winkler-Titus for providing valuable insights into the themes and discussions at this conference, and your perspectives on responsible leadership, digital transformation, and the role of the private sector in conflict resolution in Africa was quite enlightening as well.